Negative thinking is like a groove worn deep into a record. Over time, we play the same mental tracks, doubts, fears, criticisms, and limitations over and over until they start to feel like truth. But here's the truth. That track isn't yours. It's just familiar, and the most important step to breaking that cycle is to interrupt it. Your brain works in patterns. When a trigger hits a mistake, a memory, a failure, even just a stressful moment, your mind fires off a rehearsed response. That response might be self-doubt, self-criticism, or even despair. And unless you do something radically different in that instant, your brain will take the path of least resistance and fall right back into the same mental rut. Interrupting the pattern is the moment where everything begins to change. But let's be clear, this is not about pretending negative thoughts don't exist. It's not about forcing toxic positivity or ignoring real challenges. It's about stepping into the space between stimulus and response and reclaiming your power. Most people live their lives as if they have no choice but to obey every thought their mind delivers. That's a lie. You are not your thoughts. You are the observer of them. And because you are the observer, you can intervene. Imagine someone walking into a dark room and flipping on the light. That's what interrupting the pattern looks like. It's that simple and that powerful. You don't need a grand revelation. You just need to break the sequence. How do you do it? First, you recognize the moment. Catch yourself in the act. That voice that says, "You always mess things up." Or "What's the point in even trying?" That's the signal. That's your opportunity to step in, and when you notice it, don't let it pass. Do something physical to mark the interruption. Say stop. Out loud, snap your fingers, clap your hands, stand up. Shake it off. Sounds silly, maybe. But the brain responds to physical triggers. The more distinct the interruption, the more it disrupts the automatic loop. Why does this matter? Because when you're in a negative spiral, your brain is in survival mode. It's not thinking creatively. It's not looking for opportunities. It's scanning for danger. And in that mode, you won't find solutions, you'll only find more problems. Interrupting the pattern shocks the system out of survival mode and opens the door for something new. This isn't about waiting until you feel like it. That moment won't come. The pattern will continue unless you do something different. It might feel uncomfortable at first. You may not believe it's working, but that's only because your brain is addicted to the old pattern. And like any habit, it takes repetition to create a new normal. There's a technique used in behavioral psychology called a pattern interrupt. It's used to stop compulsive thoughts or behaviors by jolting the person into awareness. It's not magic. It's biology. Your brain cannot hold two conflicting patterns at once. If you interrupt the negative sequence with a new, strong enough stimulus, whether it's movement, sound, or focused attention, you give yourself a window to redirect. Let's say you're in the middle of spiraling. You're thinking about how you failed that job interview. Your mind is racing, telling you you're not good enough. You're shrinking internally. Instead of letting it roll, you stop. You jump up. You shout something empowering. You take 10 deep breaths. You smile yes, even if it's forced. That moment isn't fake. It's deliberate. You've interrupted the momentum. Interrupting the pattern isn't about eliminating negative thoughts permanently. That's not realistic. Thoughts will come, life will hit, but it's about disrupting their control over you. You can't control the first thought that enters your mind, but you have complete control over whether you let it stay, grow, and take root. Over time, this process becomes instinctive. Your brain rewires itself. The moment negativity tries to take hold, you meet it with presence, power, and motion. You'll catch it faster. You'll shift quicker. You'll stop letting it lead. And when that becomes your new pattern, everything changes. This is where true change begins, not with a plan or a goal, but in the raw, unscripted moment when you hear the old story begin and you choose not to follow it. Interrupt the pattern. Your mind is not separate from your body. What you feel emotionally is directly tied to what you do physically. Every thought you think has a physical posture, a rhythm, a pattern that it follows in your body. You cannot feel powerless in a powerful stance. You cannot feel energized while breathing shallow, hunched over and still. The body leads the mind just as much as the mind leads the body. When negative thinking takes over, the first thing that changes often without us realizing is our physical state. Our shoulders collapse, our breathing slows or becomes erratic, our eyes drop downward, our chest tightens. These changes may seem subtle, but they're powerful. They send a message to the brain, we're in trouble, and that signal perpetuates the negative loop. But here's the incredible truth. If your body can reinforce a negative mental state, then it can also be used to reverse it. You don't have to wait until you feel better to act differently. You can act differently to feel better. Changing your physiology is one of the fastest ways to interrupt negative thinking and create a new emotional state. You don't need hours of meditation or deep therapy sessions to shift your state. You need motion, intention, and breath. The body is a tool, and if you learn to use it, you gain access to energy, clarity, and confidence on demand. Think about how you move when you're excited. There's energy in your step, openness in your chest, lightness in your face. Now compare that to how you move when you're discouraged or overwhelmed. Slow, heavy, restricted. These physical patterns are not random. They are responses trained into the nervous system. So when you consciously reverse that posture, that breath, that movement, the brain responds with a new emotion. The fastest and most accessible change you can make is your breath. When you feel your mind racing or sinking, start with the breath. Inhale deeply through your nose, filling your lungs completely. Hold for a few seconds, then exhale through your mouth. Repeat this pattern. Deep breathing signals to the brain that you are safe. It regulates your nervous system and begins to calm the mental noise. But don't stop with breath alone. Move, stand up, stretch your arms toward the ceiling, shake your body out, jump in place, go for a walk, do push-ups, dance, do anything that breaks the stagnation of sitting and stewing in negative thoughts. Your mind feeds on stillness when it's filled with fear. But when you move, you interrupt that feeding cycle. You flood the system with a new message, one of strength, alertness, and choice. There's a reason athletes and performers use rituals before they go into action. They condition their bodies to access peak states. You can do the same. Create a movement pattern that becomes your trigger for shifting state. Maybe it's a quick power pose. Maybe it's shaking out your hands and rolling your shoulders. Maybe it's shouting something empowering while jumping. These aren't gimmicks. They're anchors. Physical anchors that snap your nervous system into a more empowering mode. Notice how posture plays a role. Posture is a language. It tells the world and your subconscious how you feel. Stand tall. Roll your shoulders back. Lift your chin. Align your spine. These small adjustments, when done with intention, radically change how you experience the moment. Try feeling like a failure while standing in the posture of a winner. It's not easy, because posture creates presence, and presence blocks panic. You might think these things are too simple to work, but the truth is, simplicity is what makes them powerful. Complexity paralyzes action, but when something is simple, stand up, breathe, move, you're more likely to do it in the heat of the moment. And that's when it counts the most. There's also emotion in motion. That phrase isn't just catchy, it's accurate. When your body moves with energy, your emotional state begins to catch up. If you've ever danced your way out of a bad mood or run your way through frustration, you've already experienced this. It's not hypothetical, it's hardwired. The trick is consistency. Don't just wait for breakdown moments. Train this daily. Prime your body in the morning. Move before your meetings. Breathe deeply when you feel stuck. Get into the habit of changing your physical state before you try to change your mental one. Because when you move your body, you open the gate to shifting everything else. Every emotion lives in the body, so if you want a new emotion, start there. Don't just think differently. Stand differently, breathe differently, move differently. Your body is a powerful ally. And when you use it with intention, it becomes your bridge out of negative thought and into empowered action. Every negative emotion you experience starts with a thought. But not every thought you have is true. In fact, many of the thoughts that create the most pain, fear, anxiety, and self-doubt are assumptions, distortions, or outdated mental scripts inherited from the past. You don't have to believe everything you think. That's not just a catchy phrase, it's a mental revolution. The key to breaking negative thinking is not to suppress thoughts or run from them, but to challenge them at the root. When a negative thought shows up, I'm not good enough, they'll never accept me, this always happens to me, most people do something automatic, they accept it as fact. No questioning, no resistance, no pause. The thought enters, the emotion follows, and a story builds. But a thought is not a fact. It's a possibility, it's a sentence, it's an idea, and unless you stop and challenge it, it becomes your internal reality. The process of challenging a thought starts with asking one powerful question. Is it absolutely true? Not kind of true, not emotionally true, not used to be true. Is it absolutely, without question, true? Right now, in this moment. When you ask this question with honesty, you force your mind to slow down. You step outside the emotion and into the observer's seat. And in that space, even the most convincing thought begins to lose its grip. Let's say the thought is, I always fail when I try something new. That thought sounds absolute. It's definitive. It feels true, especially if you've experienced a few painful setbacks. But pause and challenge it. Always, every single time, can you find even one example, no matter how small, when you succeeded at something new, or learned and grew even when things didn't go perfectly? If the answer is yes, even once, then the original thought crumbles under its own weight. Your brain thrives on repetition and evidence. If it's been fed a repeated thought over the years, by your environment, your experiences, or your own inner critic, it will treat that thought like a belief. But beliefs are just thoughts you've accepted and repeated. And that means they can be replaced. The moment you start questioning the evidence behind a negative thought, the brain is forced to search for alternatives. That's how you begin to build a new belief. Sometimes negative thoughts hide beneath logic. They disguise themselves as realism or protection. You might think, I'm just being honest with myself, or I'm trying to be prepared. But honest doesn't mean harsh, and prepared doesn't mean paralyzed. Being critical doesn't make you wise, it makes you afraid. So even when a thought seems rational, check its intention. Is it moving you forward or holding you back? Is it helping you grow or shrinking your perspective? Another powerful way to challenge a thought is to look at its consequences. Ask yourself, what happens when I believe this thought? If believing I'm not smart enough leads you to stay silent, avoid challenges, and never grow, then that belief is costing you your potential. On the other hand, ask, who would I be without this thought? Imagine yourself moving through life without that mental weight. How would you speak? What would you attempt? How would you show up differently? Thoughts aren't just words in your head. They create entire emotional environments. If you plant a thought of fear, the emotion will be anxiety. If you plant a thought of guilt, the emotion will be shame. If you plant a thought of inadequacy, the emotion will be self-doubt. But if you interrupt the pattern and replace the thought, the emotional soil changes too. This process is not about lying to yourself or denying hard truths. It's about being radically honest. Real honesty includes recognizing the full truth, not just the painful half. The thought, "I failed," may be true in isolation, but it's incomplete. A more honest version might be, "I failed, but I learned," or "I failed that time, but I've succeeded before." Honesty without context becomes distortion. It's also important to speak the thought out loud, give it a voice. Sometimes the act of saying a negative thought out loud makes it sound ridiculous. "I'm worthless," when heard through your own voice, often shocks the system. It's easier to believe a lie when it stays quiet in your head. Bringing it into the light makes it easier to evaluate and disarm. Challenging a thought takes courage. It takes the willingness to face discomfort and question long-standing beliefs. It means stepping away from the comfort of familiar pain and into the uncertainty of growth. But in that discomfort, something new begins. A shift, a crack in the foundation. The voice that once shouted "you can't" starts to whisper "maybe you can." And that whisper is enough to take the next step. Once a negative thought is interrupted and challenged, there's a critical space, a gap. That space is where transformation happens. But it must be filled. If you leave it empty, the old thought, no matter how false or limiting, will find its way back in. The human mind craves certainty, and if you don't give it something stronger, something more aligned with growth and strength, it will default to the old narrative simply because it's familiar. That's why you must replace the thought, deliberately and immediately, with one that empowers you. Empowerment is not about repeating positive affirmations you don't believe. It's not about faking confidence or chanting empty phrases. It's about choosing thoughts that align with possibility, progress, and truth. Thoughts that serve your highest potential, not your fears. The brain can only focus on one dominant thought at a time. If you replace a disempowering idea with an intentional, energizing one, you shift your mental state and direction in real time. Imagine your mind like a garden. If you pull out a weed, a negative, limiting belief, but plant nothing in its place, it won't take long before the weeds return. The soil is still there, unguarded, vulnerable to whatever settles in. But if you replace it with something strong, resilient belief, a grounded perspective, a powerful affirmation, you build a mental structure that protects against the return of the old narrative. The question is, what do you replace it with? Not just anything, not wishful thinking. You replace it with something that feels true, but also expands your identity. It might be a statement like, "I am learning every day," or "I've handled worse," or "I don't need to be perfect to be powerful." These aren't lies. They're higher truths. They acknowledge reality, but point toward potential. They pull your attention upward, out of fear, out of shame, and toward action. The most powerful replacements are personal. They come from your own experience, not someone else's quote. If you've succeeded before, remind yourself, "I've done this before. I can do it again." If you've overcome pain, remind yourself, "I survived that. This won't break me." If you've made progress, say, "I'm not where I want to be, but I'm not where I used to be either." These thoughts don't pretend you have it all figured out, but they anchor you in movement, not paralysis. There is power in language. The words you speak to yourself, internally or out loud, shape the way you feel and act. Replacing a thought is like choosing the tone of your own inner narrator. Most people let that voice run wild, influenced by old conditioning, criticism, and fear. But you can take the microphone back. You can write a new script, line by line, and rehearse it until it becomes your default setting. When you replace a negative thought, attach it to something active. Instead of just saying, "I'm strong," Connect it to an action. I'm strong enough to take one step forward today. Instead of saying, I'm confident, say, I'm confident enough to try, even if I'm afraid. Action validates belief. The more you move in alignment with your new thought, the more believable it becomes. It's not just about saying different things. It's about living them out moment by moment. Replacing a thought doesn't mean denying emotion. You're not ignoring pain, fear, or disappointment. You're simply choosing a perspective that allows you to respond, not just react. When something difficult happens, you can acknowledge it without letting it define you. This hurts, but it's not the end. This is hard, but I can handle hard things. That's replacement in its most honest form, authentic, grounded, and forward-focused. Over time, these empowering replacements become habits. Just like your old negative thoughts once ran on autopilot, your new ones begin to take over the wheel. You'll start noticing the moment a disempowering idea enters your mind, and without even trying, you'll replace it with something stronger. It becomes instinct, not forced but natural. You won't need to battle every thought because your mental environment will no longer be fertile ground for limitation. Replacing thoughts is not just about feeling better in the moment. It's about shaping who you become. Every thought you choose reinforces a belief, and every belief builds your identity. If you keep choosing thoughts that speak to your strength, your resilience, your growth, you're not just thinking differently. You're becoming someone different, someone who leads their mind instead of being led by it, someone who acts from purpose, not from fear, someone who writes their own internal story with clarity, conviction, and courage-breaking. Negative thinking is not a one-time breakthrough. It's a discipline, a daily decision, a commitment to mental conditioning that must be reinforced just like any other part of your growth. The same way a muscle weakens without training, your mind defaults to old, familiar patterns when left unattended. It doesn't matter how strong a new belief is today. If you don't return to it tomorrow, it begins to fade. Transformation is not born from a single spark, but from consistent fire. Conditioning the mind is not about perfection. It's not about never having a negative thought again. That's not realistic, and it's not the goal. The goal is awareness and repetition. You train your thoughts like you train your body, through deliberate practice. You don't go to the gym once and expect to stay fit for life. Likewise, you don't shift your mindset once and expect lifelong resilience. What you do daily, even in small doses, determines what dominates your mind long term. Your mind is constantly being conditioned, whether you realize it or not. Every day you're either strengthening the habit of doubt or the habit of belief. Every time you wake up and start scrolling through negativity, you reinforce anxiety and comparison. Every time you replay old failures in your mind, you condition hesitation. But every time you start your day with intention, every time you speak something empowering over yourself, every time you move when you want to freeze, you're rewiring your mind towards strength. Daily conditioning begins with ownership of your environment. What you feed your mind matters. The books you read, the conversations you have, the content you consume, the tone of your internal dialogue, it's all programming. You can't expect to think clearly while living in mental clutter. Start cleaning house. Surround yourself with inputs that build you. Turn down the noise that makes you feel small. Choose inspiration, truth, and challenge over fear, drama, and distraction. Morning is the most powerful time to condition your mind. In that space between sleep and the demands of the world, your brain is the most suggestible. What you feed it in that first hour sets the emotional tone for your entire day. Don't hand over that time to chaos. Take it for yourself. Even 5 or 10 minutes of intentional thought can redirect your momentum. Ask yourself powerful questions. What am I excited for today? What challenge can I grow from? What kind of person do I want to be in this situation? Questions like these don't just spark motivation, they direct your focus. The mind will always follow focus. Whatever you focus on, you feel. If you focus on lack, you feel scarcity. If you focus on progress, you feel momentum. You have to condition yourself to look for what's working, not in denial of struggle, but in defiance of being ruled by it. That's not naive optimism, that's mental strength. Training yourself to look for possibility when everything around you looks difficult is one of the most powerful habits you can form. Journaling is another form of daily conditioning. Writing down your thoughts forces clarity. It reveals patterns. It helps you separate truth from distortion. Use it as a mirror. Get your thoughts out of your head and onto the page. Then evaluate them. Which thoughts serve you? Which ones sabotage you? What's a more empowering version of the same situation? When you do this consistently, you begin to take command of your own mental narrative. Physical movement also plays a role in conditioning the mind. When you move your body every day with intention, even briefly, you signal to your brain that you're in control. You remind yourself that energy is something you can generate, not something you wait for. Movement builds momentum. It reinforces the identity of someone who shows up and takes action, even when it's hard. Mental conditioning doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't require hours of effort. What matters is consistency. A short practice done daily beats a long one done occasionally. It could be as simple as one powerful affirmation you repeat to yourself each morning. One question you ask yourself every night. One moment in the day where you pause, check in, and realign your thoughts before they spiral. These small rituals, done with intention, become anchors. They create stability in chaos. They remind you of your power when fear starts to rise. The truth is, life won't stop challenging you. Circumstances won't always go your way. People won't always treat you how you want to be treated. But if you've conditioned your mind, you don't crumble when things go wrong. You respond, you redirect, you reset. That's the difference between being a slave to circumstance and being the one who shapes it. And that difference is built, not in the big moments, but in the small, consistent choices you make every single day. Negative thinking isn't something you're stuck with. It's something you've practiced, and anything practiced can be unpracticed, unlearned, replaced, and rebuilt. It starts with awareness. The moment you catch the pattern, you disrupt its momentum. From there, you shift your state, because motion changes emotion, and your body is the fastest way to send your brain a new message. Then you challenge the thought, ask if it's even true, demand proof, and watch the lie unravel. But don't stop there. Replace it. Don't leave your mind empty. Fill it with something powerful, something you believe, something that moves you forward. And then do it again tomorrow, and the next day, and the day after that. This isn't about a single moment of motivation. It's about building a mental standard, training your focus, your language, your belief, until strength becomes your new normal. You won't be perfect. You don't need to be. What matters is repetition. What matters is showing up. What matters is remembering that the most powerful changes are the ones you choose over and over, one thought at a time. That's how you break the cycle. That's how you take your power back. And that's how you lead your life not from fear, but from strength.